Hey guys, welcome to the Homestead. So every so often I do videos on things, everyday things, normal things that we do here on the Homestead that in other places you would be an outlaw. It's illegal. And today we're going to focus on, you guessed it, chickens. There are so many things, just like everyday normal things that we do on the Homestead that are illegal in other places that make you an outlaw. Hold on to your hats. I'm going to show you a couple articles. Let's go ahead and get into it. This one taking place in Brunswick, Maryland. It says Brunswick passes backyard chicken ordinance. Oh, boy. Okay, so November 17th, this was just recently, the Brunswick City Council voted 4-2 Tuesday night to pass a long-awaited and much-debated backyard ordinance that allows residents to keep chickens on their property. Why do you think, leave a comment below, why do you think people might be more interested today to raise chickens on their own backyard properties? Why do you think? Maybe it has something to do with the cost of food today. Maybe it has something to do with the cost of eggs today. And the fact that in some places you can't even find eggs. Well, there's an easy solution for that. You can raise chickens. It says council members Vaughn Ripley and Angel White voted no, scumbags. People in the audience clapped in celebration when the ordinance passed. During a special election on August 2nd, Brunswick residents voted in support of having chickens 425 to 306. Must be a small town. And so my question is, if there was an election and the residents already voted to make it okay to have chickens, why are we still debating this for an ordinance? I don't get this. Since then, the council has been developing the ordinance. So, yes, you have voted to get something, and now we will tell you how you will get it. Is that the most insane thing you've ever heard? Okay, Councilman Christopher Vigliotti, a vocal supporter of the chicken ordinance, said he was glad chickens are finally allowed in Brunswick, but emphasized that the work isn't finished. The ordinance, he said, could still be amended and worked on as concerns arise. We won't be carving it into stone, Vigliotti said. Lisa, whatever that name is, Billio of Brunswick, voiced her concerns about the ordinance during a public comment portion of the meeting. Billio, I'm just going to go with Billio. Billio said she supported the ordinance, but the language made it too restrictive. Even though her property is a half an acre, she said, ordinance requirements on where chickens can be and how many chickens are allowed per square feet only allows her to have 2 chickens. So you got a half an acre, and because of the ordinance, you can only get 2 chickens. And having 2 chickens isn't healthy for the chickens themselves. I agree. Yeah, chickens need other chickens. Chickens are happiest in groups of at least 4, she said. 2 chickens is not a healthy flock. I would agree. She also said coop requirements were too restrictive. The ordinance doesn't allow for sheds to be repurposed into coops, and the 6-foot maximum height makes it difficult to maintain and clean the coop. The ordinance also mandates that a coop cannot be visible from the road. Yes, because we don't want anyone to see your dirty, filthy, rotten coop. There's no place on the road where you would not be able to see my backyard, she said. In response to Vigliotti said the council should make sure any further implementations are done as thoughtfully as possible. It says, before the vote, Ripley said he wanted to explain why he would be voting no on the ordinance. Yes, explain why you're a communist scumbag. Please, we all are interested. He said he had a general concern, such as increase in predators, diseases, and viruses. Yes, those filthy, stinking chickens. Bring in those T-Rexes that you have to be scared about. He also disagreed with the claim that chickens would bring more of a mess and a bad smell to the area. But his chief concern, Ripley said, was enforcing the ordinance. I'm afraid we're going to have to add somebody, an employee, to be able to do enforcement of this. Yes, because, see, that's how government works. You continue to get larger and larger and larger and larger, and you have to add someone to the payroll to go around and be that nanny, to be that Nancy, to be that Karen, who will make sure that every one of these simpleton citizens is following our ordinance to the letter. And if you don't, we're going to give you a hefty fine. Because that's how governments make money. They fine you to death. White agreed with Ripley. However, Vigliotti was frustrated with voices of opposition. He said he wanted to discuss the matter of chickens in the spring, but was shut down, leading to the referendum. Okay, I respect the logic behind the discussion, but what I'm struggling to come to terms with is why we didn't have that discussion in the spring when I wanted to talk about it. Councilman Andrew St. John, participating in the meeting by phone, chimed in. He said the council wasn't discussing whether or not the town should have chickens because people already voted that they wanted chickens. Yes, they wanted chickens. We're discussing how we're going to implement chickens. So we know you voted for what you wanted. Now we're going to discuss how we give you what you want. Because we're not just going to give you what we want. We have to make sure we give it to you the way we want you to have it. Does this not... See, I did that video a while back where that guy got into that tank and like mowed down the entire town. This is why people do that. I'm just saying. Okay, so that's the first article. Brunswick, Maryland, congratulations. You now have chickens. You're now allowed to have chickens depending on how much acreage you have. If you have maybe less than a half acre, maybe you get one chicken. I don't know. You're allowed to have one chicken. All right, heading over to where are we at here? Kenosha. I believe that's probably Kenosha, Wisconsin. Let me let's see, zoom in on this article too. Kenosha, Wisconsin. After years of debate, the city council has voted to allow some Kenosha residents to own a small number of regulated backyard chickens. Okay, back to the article. The measure passed on a 10-7 vote Monday night in council chambers before a crowded gallery of chicken enthusiasts holding signage reading "Don't be a chicken" and having squeaky, I guess they had squeaky rubber chickens. The ordinance was sponsored by Alderman Brandy Ferry and co-sponsored by Aldermans Roland Pizzala and Kelly McKay, David Mao, and Bill Seil. I'd like to thank every citizen, city employee, alderperson who contributed to the approval of this proposal, Ferry said, adding that it underwent many revisions. I believe that the language in front of you will allow for citizens to keep backyard chickens in a safe manner. In my research, I made a phone call up to the city of Racine. They have had their urban chickens ordinance in place since 2015, and I was advised at the time of our conversation that they believed they had 11 or so permits. I think Racine's a pretty big town. You're telling me only 11 people have permits? That's crazy. It was not considered a burden, and it was going well. That's good. Scrolling down here, it says, Ferry said the ordinance may even deter some from owning backyard chickens because of the rules, regulations, cost, and work involved. Before the vote, McKay asked the council not to prohibit eligible city residents from pursuing their passions. Obviously, I do give a cluck, McKay said, Give people the right, give them the freedom to choose to have chickens, let them have the freedom to do what their passions are. Obviously, this is a very niche passion. Yes, because only weirdos would have chickens in their backyard. There's only a small percentage of weirdos who would want that. The people who are going to do it are going to invest in it and do it right. Alderman Dominic Ruffalo was deeply opposed to the ordinance. Look at these people. They got their backyard chickens and their mask on. Oh, good grief. This town's in trouble. Okay, chickens to me are farm animals, I'm sorry. I think they belong on a farm, Ruffalo said. Ruffalo also said he fears such fowl could put the public at risk of bird flu. Thus the reason the mask, because we want to have chickens, but we don't want to catch bird flu. My constituents don't want this, and I don't want this in the 16th district, he said. I am a no vote. I told the sponsor I was a no vote in the beginning, and she did a real good job. I congratulated her on her hard work and effort and her passion on this, but I'm as passionate against it as she is for it. Scrolling down, Aldermans Eric Hoggard, Holly Kangas, Rocco LaManchia, Daniel Prozansky, and Keith Rosenberg also voted against it. According to the ordinance, no one would be allowed to keep, feed, or harbor it like harbor. You're harboring chickens. It's like you're harboring criminals. See that this is why this has appeared in an outlaw episode. No one would be allowed to keep, feed, or harbor any chickens without first obtaining approval from the Public Safety and Welfare Committee and City Council. So you have to go through the Public Safety and Welfare Committee and the City Council before a license would be issued for the keeping of such fowl. The applicant's neighbors would also be notified of the request so that they can express any concerns to the city. Yes, see, the neighbors have to be informed because we want to make sure the neighbors aren't going to have to put up with your dirty bird flu infested chickens. Any person who keeps chickens would also have to obtain an animal license prior to January 1 of each year or within 30 days prior to acquiring the chickens. The license year would run from January 1st to December 31st. The license fee would be $200. All right, now let's just back up for a second. Before we get to the $200 bit, January 1st. So let's just say it's February. Oh, let's just say, hey, it's November right now. It's November. And so I would have to get this prior. I guess I wouldn't even be able to get it. I'd have to wait until the beginning of the year or within 30 days prior to acquiring the chicken. So I would have to get it and then pay for it and then pay again on January 1st. So I have to pay in November and then pay again in January. That's $400. Maybe I'm reading that wrong. Maybe I'm mistaken on that. Maybe there's some sort of, maybe you only have to pay the $200 once per year. But I don't know. But let's go back to the $200. If it's $200, are you really saving all that much money? If that's the case, you know that chickens only lay a certain amount of eggs for only so long, and then they begin to rapidly drop off, and then you have to replace those non-performing chickens. Right? I mean, you know this. So let's just say I think the highly productive chicken breed is going to produce around 250 eggs a year. I think depending on what eggs cost per dozen, you divide that by 12 and you get the single cost for an egg. And then you have to do the math and ask yourself, is this worth it? It's only going to be worth it maybe for a year. And then you have to get rid of that chicken. Let's keep reading. According to the ordinance, only single-family dwellings will be allowed to have up to 4 hens. So you can only have 4 of these. No minimum enclosure will be allowed within 25 feet of any residential structure. So a whole bunch of rules. According to the proposal, a licensee would also be required to keep his or her premises sanitary to prevent obnoxious odors from escaping to any private or public property and such as to not jeopardize the public health, safety, and welfare. Yes, because these animals are disgusting animals, and we can't have them putting the welfare of the public at risk. The chickens would have to be provided with a covered enclosure having a floor space of at least 16 square feet per chicken. Upon approval and construction of the coop, an enforcement officer will perform a final inspection of the enclosure to ensure compliance. The animals must be cared for each day. Yes, and that means probably you can't let them free range. You have to feed them. You can't allow them to feed themselves. Licensees would not be allowed to keep roosters or slaughter any hens. Now, that brings us back to what we talked about before. What do you do with the hens when they're not producing eggs anymore? If you have chickens, you know, after about 3 years, you might get an egg here and there, but around here, and that's it. And she into the pressure canner she goes, and you can make broth, and you can do, you can still eat the chicken, but you can't, it's not tender anymore. You gotta pressure can it or pressure cook it. But you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to. So what are you going to do? Are you going to rehome these chickens? Here, have a pet chicken somewhere. That chicken just gets disappeared. I don't know what happened to Henrietta. She was here yesterday, and all of a sudden she's gone. I guess we'll have to get another chicken. The original ordinance included language to allow ducks, but it was removed. Oh, no ducks. That's just going too far. The city council has the power to revoke a license for anyone in violation of the ordinance or cruelty or mistreatment of chickens. That would include you, who own chickens, and all of a sudden one just magically disappears. I don't know what happened to her. She was just there. Obviously, some predator got it. I don't know. She just ran off. She decided to take flight and just, head off into the wild blue yonder.
We'll either die free chickens or die trying.
Guys, listen, if you're living in one of these places, it's time for you to get out. Get out. And that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, guys. See you next time on Homestead. Bye. This is Grandma. Grandma survived the Great Depression. She survived the Great Depression because her supply chain was local and she knew how to do stuff. Grandma was smart. Grandma told us to make do with what you got. She also said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Homesteading is all about self-reliance and declaring ourselves to be independent from the system. We grow our own food, we raise our own animals, and doing these things helps safeguard our families from the unpredictable world that surrounds us. But what about banking? I love being my own power company, but what about being my own bank? Right now, our country is over $30 trillion in debt and rising. The Fed keeps printing money, and the Congress won't stop spending money. Staying attached to the modern banking system and their investment vehicles is like putting all of your eggs in one very, very fragile basket. On one side, you have the threat of inflation and your savings value floating away. And the other side is a possible deflationary stock market collapse, just like what happened in the 1930s. Genesis Gold Group is like a basket holding eggs, and these eggs are impossible to break. History shows us that all paper investments have and will return to their intrinsic value eventually. Zero. But gold, silver, and other precious metals have never, ever been worthless. In every collapse throughout history, people have turned back to precious metals to find monetary value. If you have a 401k, an IRA, or a savings account where you're literally watching the purchasing power inflate away, give Genesis Gold Group a call right now. Today. This instant. They can develop a strategy for you and the days ahead. I can tell you how I raise sheep, I can tell you how I raise chickens, or the best way to grow tomatoes, or how to hook up a solar panel. But Genesis Gold Group is your best shot at safeguarding your hard-earned savings and investments during this increasingly turbulent time in history. The link and phone number is in the description below, or visit their website at genesisgoldgroup.com. Hey guys, did you know you can become a patron of an American Homestead? They get access to private videos, and we send them gifts from the homestead that we make here on the homestead. And we also enter our patrons into special giveaways that are only available to them. And before you go, please check out these other great videos. Go ahead, click. Oh wait,